Hey guys, good to be back with you again. As you know, I haven't completely abandoned things here. I'll tell you a little bit sort of about what my thinking has been recently. So when I started up Action Football Sundays, the initial idea was to do a series of replay projects, sort of like one team and one season at a time. And the idea was that we're going to do some pro teams and some college teams, and we're going to sort of mix it up and have just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Of course, that didn't quite work out so well, largely because of the way that the fatigue system works in Action PC football, which was not really up to what I would consider to be like the basic acceptable standard. However, there have been those of you who have provided some advice that I really do want to try out. I think that there are some other things that I probably could look into in the forums to try to set the project up well beforehand, before like we get really into it, to make sure that we have something that works. So I do want to give it another try. Now, the initial idea that I had was to alternate between professional and college football seasons, sort of one by one. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing here in the wake of the recent controversy about Florida State being undefeated and not making it to the college football playoff, and all of the other controversies we've had in the past. My idea is it might be a good idea to go back through 2023 to do some sort of a college football project that would try to resolve, to the extent possible, some of these issues and controversies, and come up with a champion that is actually fit to be called champion. This would, in my mind at least, require some radical realignment of college football. In other words, try to take everything as it exists now and put it into more of a geographic setting. Maybe go down to only 64 teams in the top level of football, instead of having whatever it is now, 100 and however many there are currently. Getting rid completely of the current conference structure, and instead look for different geographic rivalries, and sort of have, this is the Northeast division, this is the Southwest division, and so on and so forth. That's kind of the thing that I'm fiddling around with in my mind right now. And I think that our next few videos will be sort of a look at trying to establish this and trying to push it forward. Now, I've looked through my old emails from Action PC, and I know that usually the college football season will come out like in August of every year. That gives us some time to do a couple of things, including some time to get a theoretical framework written out and discussed, and some time to go backwards and to look at college football itself, and to look for different play calling patterns, and to look for how teams generally operate, and to be able to figure out, what kind of play calling schemes make sense and what kind of schemes don't make sense. That's sort of where I see the future of this channel in the future. I see us doing maybe a little bit less of just sort of like a focus on the grind, going from one game to the next in a replay setting, and sort of opening things up a little bit more, looking at how Action PC football is, or theoretically is not, a good simulation of the game itself. And trying to make sort of heads or tails out of the systems that are part of Action PC footballs, like play calling and stuff like that. The truth is that for all of the problems that I have with the fatigue system, and the fact that the 1980 Browns ended up not being able to play under my control, not being able to play their big receivers because they only had so many catches in real life, and we'd already hit that in the replay, or whatever stupid reason it is. Despite that fact, there are things about this game I really, really like. And the thing I like more than anything else, as I've said before, is that chess battle between the offense and the defense, especially between yourself and the computer, trying to guess on defense what it is that they're going to do, or even on offense, trying to guess and think of where the gap might be, and how we can take advantage of that. So basically what I'm saying here is we're going to, I think, have two things going forward. On the one hand, I think we're going to talk about a potential like college football realignment. I really want the realignment to be something that is applicable to other seasons, right? So it turns out if you do a college football project using any football game, you have a problem, because you'll notice that your marquee teams at the beginning of the season always have games that count in the standings that are really preseason games, right? You're playing games against like Division II teams, or against whatever. I went to BYU, right? BYU was independent for years, and for a couple of those years, the entire season was like that, right? We're playing just a bunch of no-name teams, and we don't have anybody on the schedule. I mean, there's no fun in that at all. It's not interesting. It's not fun to see teams play matchups where you know that they're going to win, and then occasionally the underdog is able to pull off an upset, or sometimes a really massive upset. But, it's an exception, it's not the rule. We want to sort of stay away from that. Instead, what I want to do is something where we have numerous divisions that have strong teams that are at least capable, and that makes some sort of an interesting structure, instead of having a season where, some of the games are complete gimmies, and you're claiming that one team is better than another team for reasons that are totally arbitrary. By the way, if you look back in the history of college football, you'll notice that this is a problem that goes back years and years, right? So, for example, we'll probably talk more about them later, but if you look at the 1946 Notre Dame team, which ended up winning the national championship, had that famous 0-0 tie with Army. Notre Dame, before its game with Army, didn't really play much of anybody. I mean, that's the thing. You look at certain famous seasons, especially from the distant past, and what you will see are teams that played a lot of matches against junior colleges, or you'll see like the famous Hawaii teams of like the 1920s, and they were playing a bunch of high school teams, right? And you think, oh yeah, this team's amazing. They went like 10-0, but they played maybe like one or two actual college programs. There are problems like that would be interesting in terms of action PC football to go back and revisit and to try to solve. Now, there are some issues with that I know about. One of the big ones is I believe that there is, and you guys will have to correct me, it's been a while since I've looked at this, but I believe that there is a certain sort of like strength of schedule or some similar numeral or variable in the game that is supposed to mean that, certain teams are stronger than certain other teams. You have to look into that and see, what can we do to make sure that it's actually a fair fight, and that, just because, whatever, Ohio State seems to have a more challenging schedule than this other team. Every time the two teams will meet each other, Ohio State will completely dominate. We'll look at stuff like that, and we'll see if we can come up with some solutions for that, or some workarounds, something to make it so that a project like this would actually be competitive. Anyway, though, there you go. That's sort of where my thinking is right now. So basically, I see sort of two things in the immediate future for this channel before we start a project. I'm not going to jump into another replay project quite yet. Instead, I want to spend time messing around with like play calling. I want to mess around with, what certain calls in the game represent in real life and how to interpret that, how to look into the theories behind play calling in action PC football, and like when you theoretically should call one play or another, when you should expect this, when you should expect that, stuff like that. That's the sort of thing that we really want to look into with this game, and we want to combine that with another look into how we could reformat everything in the college football world, and how we theoretically could come up with something that's sort of geographic, and some of the problems that are entailed with that, right? As you look at this and as you read what other people have done, you can see that there are major problems if you want things to be geographically organized that you might not think of right away. So there you have it. That's kind of what we're looking for in the future. I hope you guys are having a good day. I'll talk with you again next week. Bye-bye.